All right, it's 5 p.m. Good time of the day, everybody. Welcome to the fourth webinar of the second season of Innovative Universities Global Webinar Series, where we discuss alternative university models, which might as well be the future of higher education. So a couple of words about our webinar format, for those of you who still don't know. The webinar is always 60 minutes long. We devote 15 minutes to the presentation of the case. Then we switch to the discussion. Should you have questions, please place them in questions and answers form of Zoom, and I will render them live. Now, there is always a recording. You'll be able to watch it on Zoom, and please share your impressions using hashtag Innovative Universities on LinkedIn or any other social net. We normally trace those posts and try to respond. Now, a couple of words about our team. There are two co-hosts, me and Isak Frumin. We also have the manager, Alexandra Martinchuk, who is present. She's here, although you don't see her. And we have a student assistant, Zeynep Tan. We search for cases everywhere, and our steering committee helps us to find interesting universities that are the most curious to look at. Apart from them, we also get suggestions from everywhere. So if you have an idea of what we have to look at next, please write to us. Now I'll present our speaker for today. So first of all, we tend to trace the history of European higher education to medieval universities. And in those times, students, as you may know, did not stay in one place. They would go from city to city in search of experiences, both intellectual and cultural. And Forward College seems to be structured in a similar way, offering not one, but 3 cities to think about, reflect upon, interact with. And today we have the immense pleasure to be talking to Boris Walbaum, the founder and the president of Forward College. So Boris, the floor is all yours.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Dara. It's really nice of you to mention these origins, because indeed there was what we call the Grand Tour, where especially in the UK, students were sent in Europe, mainly in continental Europe, to explore the world, and that's how they would mature, I guess, to some extent. And it was not so focused on acquiring knowledge, but rather experiencing the world. And I think that's really one of the defining characteristics of Forward College. If we could go to the next slide, please. Alexandra, thank you very much. So I won't read our mission statement and what is written on our website. But again, I think the key differentiator, or at least my dream in founding Forward, was to design one of the most intense and rich experience for students in their late teenage or early adulthood, emerging adulthood, as some researchers call them, trying to develop not only their mind, their brains, their cognitive intelligence, but also their social intelligence, their emotional intelligence, and their practical intelligence. And why is that, and why do that now? Because I think that in a world that is obviously fast changing, highly uncertain, knowledge is not enough to make decisions, to make change happen once decisions have been made, and also to cope with the fast pace of change. You need to have the ability to navigate networks, to make connections among human beings, to be resilient and to keep a growth mindset, and to be able to make decisions even when you don't know, which is what practical intelligence is about. So that's really the core of Forward College, not only focusing on cognitive intelligence, but also on social, emotional, and practical intelligences or skills, if you want. Next slide, please, Alexandra. Thank you. So, I mean, if you see Forward College as an institution from outside, the key, a few kind of objective pieces of information. It was founded in 2020. We started our operations in September 21, so it was really a perfect moment to launch a college where you would offer students to go in 3 different countries when everyone was locked down in their homes. But nevertheless, we managed to recruit our first cohort. We currently have 3 campuses in Lisbon for the first-year students, Paris for the second-year students, and Berlin for the third-year students. And we have a total of 220 students. And we have 27 teaching full-time equivalents, including 23 full-time fellows. We call our teachers, teaching staff fellows. So that's, kind of the pieces of information you would expect to kind of see what is the size of Forward College. So now what we mean by these 4 intelligences, without going into details, because we've defined that more precisely with a set of skills corresponding to these different forms of intelligence. So when it's about cognitive intelligence, of course, it's mainly about learning how to learn, understanding the global challenges that we are evolving in, and that's, I would say, something that it's that would be much more defining than in the previous decades that we've been through, because the world has been much more stable lately than it's going to be in the decades to come, at least. That's what we can assume. Obviously, subject foundations, critical thinking, and so on. When it comes to social intelligence, we're talking about communication, networking, collaboration, building trust among people, influence, and emotional intelligence is about growth mindset, resilience, self-awareness, stress management. So it also connects with well-being, which is one of the major challenges of the new generation that we are teaching. And when it comes to practical intelligence, so as I said, it's about making decisions when you don't have the knowledge. So it's about decision making, it's about adaptability, it's about project management, it's about also, of course, obviously digital skills. So that's kind of the scope of Forward College, which is quite extensive. And in the next slide, we go a little bit into the details of how we cope. We help our students develop these different forms of intelligence, because obviously what makes us special is more the how than the what. Although there are so many universities that don't tackle the social, emotional, practical dimensions of the human intelligence. So in terms of the cognitive part, we are a recognized teaching center of the University of London. So basically, it means that the curriculum of the 7 bachelors that we teach, mainly in social sciences, as you can see on the left-hand side of the slide, are designed by the London School of Economics for most of them, and by King's College London for psychology. So which means our hands are tied when it comes to the curriculum, but it also means that we get one of the best curricula that we could think of in terms of the quality of the content that our students are provided with. But on that, we build what we call a relational or relationship-based pedagogy. I do believe that teaching needs to be both transactional and relational. What I mean by transactional is, when it comes to developing a skill or learning a content, a theory, whatever, there are easy ways with technology to help students develop these skills or practice a particular technique. And I think for that, artificial intelligence, but also more broadly, technological software tools can be very effective. But I also believe, and I mean, research also has established that to nurture your appetite for learning, you need more than that. And inspiration and the kind of energy and exchanges you get when you have an actual relationship with your teacher, whatever your age, and also with your peers is extremely important. So the way we implement this, what we call relational pedagogy or relationship-based pedagogy, is through small class teaching. We have on average 15 students per class. We also implement tutorial every week, so one-on-one tutorial between the teachers and their students, where they share the feedback on the assessments that they've been through. Each class is a flipped classroom, which is very important because it means that it's highly interactive. So it's not only you are in small group, but you actually interact between peers and with the guidance of your fellow. We call this our teachers fellows. So that's and in the end, our students sit the LSE or KCL exams depending on the academic batches that they are enrolled in. All this happens on our campuses on site, and they are awarded bachelors by the University of London under the academic direction either of the LSE or KCL. So that's for the cognitive part. And when it comes to the social part of our experience, we pretty much rely on this international exploration. So obviously they are immersed in three different cultural and linguistic environments. That's the beauty of Europe. If you travel 1,000 kilometers, but sometimes a few hundred kilometers, then you encounter very different environments, culturally speaking. And our students need to adapt to that and develop relationship with their neighbors in their student house who come from different countries. And we also have very international cohorts. The maximum proportion of nationalities normally around 15%. So no nationality accounts for more than 15% of the cohort, which means that our students need to develop relationships with students from other nationalities. Obviously, it's kind of a given for them. They practice a lot of teamwork, not only in the academics, but also in the other activities, especially the project that they do together. And they live together in the same student house. They share their kitchens, which is very important to develop your social skills. When someone steals your milk, it's a difficult situation that you need to handle, and it's not that easy when there are cultural differences. When it comes to emotional intelligence, we have a personal development program that tackles social intelligence in year one. So we have a series of modules that cover having difficult conversations, negotiation and influence, how do you initiate contact, how do you build trust, non-violent communication. So these kind of modules across year one, and emotional intelligence is more the focus of term two, where they will work on the skills that I've cited earlier in my presentation. The other dimension of emotional development at Forward College is obviously the strong well-being culture that we try to foster, not only through the availability of our well-being team, but also through a culture of a close connection, of collegiality that we nurture from the start of the year. And when it comes to practical skills, we have an entrepreneurial program that through which they do one project in year one in social impact, a digital project in year two, and a consulting project in year three. They work in teams with students coming from different academic programs, and of course different nationalities. So it's quite challenging, and they learn a lot and much more about teamwork and actually being able to pivot and plan and so on with a team with very different preferences and behaviors, rather than actually implementing something that will be amazing, and that's one of the learning. They need to narrow down the scope of their project most of the time. So as you can see on the left, so they always combine at Forward one academic bachelor's, so that, you know, they are reassured and they will have a bachelor's by the University of London. And on top of that, they add a certain amount of leadership, more or less, depending on the programs, to cover the other three different types of intelligence. Next slide, please. Each year, they go through a 360 assessment exercise. It's just illustrative. I don't want to go into the details, but maybe the question of how we assess the development of these skills is an interesting topic of discussion that we have not completely solved so far, but so it's kind of a hint for potential questions. But they do that every year. They do their self-assessment across these different skills with behavioral questions, and they also ask raters among their friends, among their fellows, among also people external to the college, to give them feedback on their emotional skills or social skills or cognitive skills. And they have 2 coaching sessions one-on-one to reflect and digest the report that they get from that, and also a second session where they can strategize on the very few skills they should focus on. And last slide, please. Thank you. So you can see on the right-hand side our 3 campuses in Lisbon, in Paris, where we are in the Cité Universitaire Internationale. We don't own this building, but we are located in this amazing place, the Cité Internationale. And in Berlin, we are in an amazing co-working space in Berlin. So about our key figures, so we've increased the size of our intake by 40% on average per year. So now we have cohorts of 100 students, 220 students, as I said in the beginning. We have a progression rate at the University of London exams of nearly 99%, sorry, with 45% of upper second class honors. So we are quite satisfied with this performance. It's an external way of checking the quality of the students we recruit, but also the quality of our teaching. We have a first graduated cohort with 70% of them admitted among the top 10 European universities and business schools, which was hugely satisfactory. Among the 60% who decided to go straight for master's program, the other 40% went to a professional gap year. And we have a very positive feedback of recruiters who have been involved, who have been exposed to our students on the workplace, with an average rating of 9.5 out of 10. Yeah. So yeah, that's it. Sorry for having been a bit longer than expected.
Okay, so I'll begin. Boris, you practically asked for a question regarding assessment, and I would like to know whether you are looking to graduate well-rounded students who have all of the competencies and all types of intelligence more or less evenly developed, or is it possible to generate a spike instead? So for instance, be extremely good at strategy, but have weak social skills.
It's a very good question, Dara. We are very clear with our students that we want them to make choices. They can't be good at everything. And that's what strategizing is about. You know, it's about making choices. It's about focusing on something that you want or you need to develop. What I mean by that is you might not be very good at emotional connection, but that's fine. You want to have a career in expertise. You don't suffer from, you know, not having a good and a deep connection with people. You are fine with that. That's fine. But if you want to be in a, you know, deal business where you need to connect, where you need to influence people, then it might be a bit of a problem. What we and we are very clear on the need of focus. It's so much more difficult to develop a skill than to read a book and to understand a book or a new theory, namely because they've been much more used to learning things, I mean, cognitively, than to develop skills. And through music or through sports, that the time it takes and the energy it takes to develop just one skill. So we very much support their focus. They're focusing on 1, 2, maybe 3 skills, not more in 1 year. But we want them to be aware of this 360 compass in a way, so that they make their choices knowing that they may have a blind spot here and there. That's an important message that we share with them.
Yes, Zach, please.
Hi, Boris.
Hi, Zach.
I hope my connection is okay. I think that it's extremely interesting point about relations. What could you say? Why suddenly higher education institution decided to move to relational pedagogy?
Well, I don't know whether they are massively doing that. You know that better than I do. I don't have a perspective for this, and have a perspective on that. I do believe that it is a challenge to move towards relational pedagogy because students are more and more shy, and will tend to shy away from direct connection. But there is also an underlying need for a safe space where they can interact with adults. So there are very contradictory aspirations or fears among, I would say, the youth, from what I can see. It's true that the tutorials is the one thing that our students like about Forward College, if they had to rank all the different formats that we offer. And I think it's also true from a faculty perspective. I mean, it's not, I think, I mean, it's definitely true. I mean, how on earth have we been able to recruit fine academics, young academics, but, really coming from top universities, from St. Andrews, from Cambridge, from, it's really King's College. It's just because we offer them the experience that they have been looking for when deciding to become academics, because you become academic looking up to your professors, and you see your professors not doing research, you see your professors teaching, right? So not all of them, but most of them have turned to academia because they wanted to teach students. So it was really striking to see how many academics told us, it sounds too good to be true. And I don't think it is, because it is true. But by the way, it's also something that we hear from our students. So, I mean, I think there is it's a big question. The question of the place of relationship, the human relationship in teaching, I think is a big topic for today. I'm not sure this is clear for everyone that we need to move towards a more relational pedagogy.
But why we do that? Because today, when we have this kind of technocratic employability objectives, why do we need relations? We need good training. We need job placement. What do we achieve with this relational orientation?
I mean, all the reports say the same, from the OECD to the World Economic Forum. You need to develop these transversal skills because, the skills for which you're training now will be obsolete in 3, 4, 5 years, you know, you name it. So the basic skills that we need, that are the reflection of what humans are talented at, is really the core of what we should be investing in. And I think there is a broad agreement on that. And I think the way you develop these skills is not through interacting with machines or reading books or doing essays or doing math exercises and so on. You need to have a substance from which to experience and on which to train. You don't learn how to play tennis, you're reading books or even looking at videos or interacting with ChatGPT. You need facts, an experience in the primary sense of the term. And that's when I was talking about, designing, a very intense, a very rich experience. If you don't have these relationships, you are not able to develop your ability to communicate, because to communicate, you need this feedback loop. So it's really through this feedback loop that you learn. I think that's the basic reason why I would argue for relational pedagogy. And also the energy. I think it can be very disheartening to learn because of this, fast-paced obsolescence, because it's a difficult world to apprehend. Perspectives are not always rosy. So if you don't nurture this human connection, you can lose the appetite for learning. And I think it's a very intangible, but we all know we've experienced COVID time, we've experienced lockdown. We know that we are very efficient when we work from home, but at some point we lose momentum, and we feel more tired, and we don't have the same energy. And you need to go back to a place where you waste a lot of time interacting with people, but even though you're less productive, you gain more energy out of it.
Isak, it makes me think that universities might be the last place to actually be teaching how to have a relationship with other humans, given that we are being taken over by technology. So, Boris, I have some questions about faculty, actually a couple of them. So the first one, linked to relational pedagogy. Tutorial is a classic Oxbridge approach. And at Oxbridge, a professor is not just a teacher, but they're also a friend, positionally, towards a student. So what is the position of your professors? Who are they to students?
So maybe just to comment on your remark, I think professional organizations do need people to interact together. And that's why Amazon went back to 100% of the week in the office. And that's where you need people to interact. You need serendipity to happen. You need to also nurture the sense of belonging, that you need to make sure that your talents stick to your organization. I'm not sure universities are doing a great job at nurturing this. There are places where people are together, but when you think of what happens in a lecture hall or even in most classrooms, there is very little interactivity among the people. I mean, there is mostly, kind of a one-way, maybe two-way, but not a kind of a network, a web of interactions. But just going to your question now, and of course, I'm not talking about more innovative universities, but more traditional universities. Indeed, the relationship between fellows and students is very informal at Forward College. And that's why we mostly hire young academics, because we want the age difference to be not too significant, so that they can relate. I do believe in inspiration. I do believe that mimetism is a very strong feature of the human being. That's how we learn how to talk. That's how we learn how to walk. And these are among the most difficult things that we achieve in terms of learning. It is indeed very relational. They are called by their first name. Because we have these booths in which they do their tutorials, and you can hear them sometimes laugh, and so it's not all formal. It's a very UK style in this sense. We are not formal at all at Forward College.
Dara, just to follow up, again, I got your point, and I see that Dara supports it. Indeed, you just made me to think that modern students are very different indeed in terms of their experience of relationships, especially with adults. Many of them are coming from a single child family and often single child, single parent family. And it's interesting that, yeah, indeed, universities might provide this experience. But how do it operationally? I mean, how you, teaching is very formal thing. And many, in fact, when I give to the good students a bad mark, I say, nothing personal, just business. How you deal with this? If you are friends, how I can give you bad grade? So what's operationally the relational pedagogy in your case means?
Well, first, we insist a lot on feedback. I think grades is somehow a misleading concept in many ways. First, because it's unidimensional, and the way people are assessed is not unidimensional. Second, because it has a reputation of being objective, while most of, at least, graduates from good schools or universities will only be assessed through qualitative, and intersubjectivity is key. So you're good if the people who have, the power to make your progression think you are good, enjoy working with you. And of course, you have ways to make that sound more objective, but in the end, it's a human judgment. It's a collection of the human judgments that make your reputation and your performance. So of course, we grade because we are also in the framework of the University of London. But with the batches that we're launching, that will be ours, we won't give an overall grade. We will grade the different skills of our framework, which is still a grade. But so now, how do they handle this? The tutorial is really the moment when they convey the message, and there is an art of feedback, and nonviolent communication, which is core to our communication, really try to disentangle facts, judgments, and how people receive it. So the fact that your reasoning was inaccurate, confusing, vague, whatever, is a fact that you can agree on. Then you don't need to say you are bad at at something, and then you let the person answer on the fact, because what you want to, and I think that's you're touching here, I think, the core of what we're trying to do. Everything is in the cognitive framing or the cognitive narrative that students will put on this grade, on this fact that their reasoning was not good. To take just an example, either they can think of this as, oh yeah, I'm bad, I'm dumb. My father always told me that, I was not smart enough and blah, blah, blah. And then, the kind of the resonance with all the ideas you have about yourself. Or you can also help them see this as a learning opportunity. And then it's about, okay, if you get a 45%, for instance, what matters is not the 45%. The reason is because there are many ways you could get a 45%. It's why did you get a 45%? And what is among the 4 key skills that you need to master in terms of knowledge, in terms of the quality of your argumentation, the quality of your language, and the originality of your thinking? What is the one where you should invest more specifically? And if you are able to grasp more specifically when you need to invest in, and you are told how you can improve on this, then you break down the problem, and it's more an operational thing that you need to improve at. Whether if it's a 45%, then it's okay, again, a bad grade, I never make it. So I think breaking it down, not being judgmental, but being fact-based, and being specific at pointing at exercises that can nurture a growth mindset in the students, can really make a difference.
I want to switch to geography. So how does interacting with cities help human competencies development?
Well, I mean, I must say that was my first idea when I thought of founding something new, and it was not about founding something new. It was about creating mergers among universities in Europe to develop, like Airbus did in the aerospace industry. Because I do believe that, like Ulysses in the Greek mythology, traveling through different environments develops your adaptability, your metis in Greek. It is definitely true, but in a different way than I thought. The feedback that we get from the students, it is actually difficult to adapt to new cities every year. It is challenging. There are many practical aspects that you need to work on. They need to learn the language each year. But the depth, I would say that the depth of their, because also it's a question of availability. It's a challenging program academically, so the time that they can devote to discovering, Paris or Lisbon or Berlin and learning the language and so on is more limited than I thought, with this combination of having, LSE program plus the leadership program. But it clearly developed their resilience. And they are, they become more courageous. They are not afraid of, now from working anywhere in the world. And they didn't know that in the beginning, and they developed this ability to be courageous, and as well to connect with different cultures. But I think we could do much better in terms of how do you relate with the community. So we do that through the projects, but we found out, especially in Lisbon, where most of our students don't speak Portuguese, their ability to relate to the local communities where they are expected to make an impact is not always as easy as we thought. So there are ways to help them and so on and so forth, but I would have hoped to do better. So obviously with our own bachelors, we'll have more time and we'll be able to give more space to interacting with the local communities, because we don't want to train kind of an international anywhere, this book about the anywhere and the somewhere, this kind of divide of classes, being those who are anchored or rooted or prisoners of a country, a city, and those who are, floating all around. And we also want them to be aware of what takes place around them, and able to connect with local communities. But this requires a little bit more time than we would expect.
So apart from the last part of your answer concerning local communities, you mostly focused on the switch, on the benefits of coming from one place, one culture, one linguistic environment to another. But when I was reading about your model, I kept thinking about, there is this getting old essay by Paul Graham, Ideas in Cities, or Cities and Ideas, something like that. And he wrote about different cities sending a different message. And it happens by everything, by the way people move, by conversations you overhear, by this beat of the city. So he was mentioning Cambridge, Massachusetts. It just sends you the message, read the books that you have there in your list, get smarter. New York tells you to get richer. Riyadh, where I am, just tells you to grow. It doesn't specify where, it's just grow and expand. And I kept thinking that human competencies, human intelligence that you mentioned should, like its shape, its format should be qualified by specific choices of cities. So why these three?
So it's been a very opportunistic choice, I must say. The opportunity of Lisbon, because everyone says, why Lisbon? Paris, Berlin, okay, you're European, so, but why Lisbon?
We don't, Dara and I don't agree with that. Lisbon is
No
a great
questions asked.
But most students do ask before they arrive in Lisbon, obviously. Then after a few hours in Lisbon, they don't anymore. So it was a pragmatic choice of a city where we had real estate opportunities, where it was safe, where it was very nice environment, cozy. And I knew a few people there, so it was easier to set up than in Spain, for instance, for us. And I think there is more potential in Lisbon than in Spanish cities. I mean, in terms of the city getting in, becoming more international and so on and so forth. And it is true that the atmosphere of Lisbon is very welcoming, is very warm, also quite simple and humble, which we like. Paris obviously is grand and hectic, and interestingly, this is not the city they enjoy the most. This is the city they are looking, most of them are looking for the most, but not the one they enjoy the most. And as Parisian, I can relate to that. And Berlin will be more about exploration and the frontiers, because it's a less established city. It's more a moving city. That's what we get from the students. I couldn't answer the question myself because I haven't lived enough in each of these cities, but that's a bit of the mood that they get from these different cities. But it's an interesting thought.
Does the sequence have any significance? Do you have to, learn
Yes.
a little to get to Berlin, or
Yes, it's definitely we wanted the first year to be cozy. So I think the culture is cozy, the city is cozy, and our campus is cozy. Paris is really the university experience. We are on the campus of the Cité Universitaire Internationale with 7,000 students coming from 130 different countries. It really looks like a US campus, amazing within Paris, but an amazing campus, highly international. And in Berlin, as I said, it's a co-working space, and they live in the city. So it's much more about, confronting themselves with adulthood both in terms of being exposed to startups and workers, professionals, and also having their own apartment and living on their own. We most of the time with other students.
Do you have plans to expand? Just one question. It's actually from the audience. I've been meaning to ask it for a while. Do you have plans to expand the geographical range?
Yeah, so we will expand. We don't have frontiers. We will expand first in Europe from 2026. We don't create any new campus next year, but from 2026. And I think that we will be adding a new campus more or less every year, every 2 years, or every year, depending on our growth, obviously, because we are pretty selective, and we want to still have very good results in the UL exams. So we'll remain selective, but we believe that there is strong demand for what we have to offer, and we'll go outside of Europe. The idea is to have a network of campuses, but we don't want to have big campuses. Even though it might be less effective from a cost perspective, but I think we lose a lot optimizing too much. You need to optimize to some extent, and I've been at McKinsey, I know what it is about. But when you want to optimize too much, then you kill something. And I think in this industry, in this activity, you need space for talent. You need some slack, and you need to have a size that fits human interactions. You can't expect social intelligence to develop and students to be highly solicited in terms of social interactions in an environment where you have a huge crowd, and you don't feel you matter. Yeah, so that's the strategy in terms of geographic expansion.
Isaac?
Yeah, may I ask again practical thing about the curriculum? What place these cities have in the curriculum? Are they part of the? I understand that they are part of their overall experience, but do you plan anything? Do you have these city stories like Dara mentioned? And if yes, is it connected with their major?
No, I would say, frankly, because as I said, on the academic part, our hands are tied. So the curriculum is preset, and you can deliver it in London, Lisbon, Paris, Berlin. It's the same curriculum. What varies is the entrepreneurship part of the leadership curriculum, because there you have these projects that they do each year. And all these projects, they are not projects where you need to design something nice. It's user-centered research, human-centered research, design. So it means that they need to identify their audience precisely in the vicinity or in the city where they live, do interviews, focus groups, and so they need to interact with these people to be able to design something that really is meaningful and relevant for them. So that's where the interaction takes place. But the nature of the interaction will depend on the choice of project that they will come up with, and we'll leave them pretty free in year 1 and 2 about what kind of topic they want to work on. It can be mental health, it can be recycling and whatever, but we want them to start with a big idea that they really care about. And then, as I said, they need to narrow it down to something they can actually tackle, on which they can make a difference, come up with a prototype and test this prototype on a small scale. But it's not about slides. It's about actually interacting with a local community. So that's where they interact. Apart from the nightlife, of course, and so on.
Yeah, Super, very interesting. My last question, I see that there are some questions from the audience, is about, again, nature of, so I'm trying to build kind of a big picture of that. And I would say that indeed it's kind of liberal arts college for modern century, taking into account the availability of bus trains, accommodations, etc. Anyway,
Exactly.
but
exactly.
what about professors? Are they same? Are they the same? Are they researchers, or they just teaching? Do they continue some intellectual work, some scholarship?
Yeah. So I would say, just before answering your question, that as a would-be elite institution, we need to work a fine line between innovation and reassurance. And we need to keep this balance, and this balance will evolve with, the buildup of our reputation. So that's why we have this double curriculum. That's why also our fellows come from, have PhDs from great universities. But as I said, we want them to come with their knowledge and with their research activity. I would say that 90% of our academic fellows, so those who teach the LSE and King's College curricula, do research. And half of those who do the leadership program do research. The way I see research is, it may sound like a truism to say so, but I think it's not. Sadly, it's a creative activity. So what we want them to have is an intellectual creative activity, which means coming up with interesting and new questions, and not, reproducing an approach to something that has been, already quite well covered, and adding very incremental pieces of knowledge, if that means anything. So currently, we do expect them to do research. We don't expect them to. It's not a request for them to publish, and we don't evaluate them on, the number of publications and the quality of the publication that they've made. We are in the process of defining what our impact research strategy is about. But if a fellow is more into expertise than research, for us, that's absolutely fine. And especially in the social sciences, I would argue that you don't. It's great to have citations and so on, but you also need to have a good network with professionals, with diplomats, with politicians, with, in politics and IR, for instance, or with business people if you are in management, to really get insights and be able to formulate new hypotheses, and also be relevant for the students, and not come up with exposing the same theories again and again and again and again. I think that the appetite for this will decrease with time, and so we are just at a moment where we compromise, but the idea is to push them towards more meddling into the world, let's say, but in a creative way. And if it doesn't end up with a publication, that's really fine, as long as there is some form of impact, and that needs to be defined. Hence the strategy we need to build up. And yeah.
So from a practical perspective, Forward College is a greenfield within two London brownfields, kind of an experimental satellite. How did you get that done?
It's a good question. You should ask the London School of Economics. I think they liked the project. Really, I think the academics connected with the project, because all academics, are deep down teachers, and they want to relate with their students, as I was saying earlier. So I think we benefited a bit for emotional benevolence. And I think we showed that we were able to recruit very good academics, which is absolutely key for them, because the key question they have is who will be teaching our courses? If you manage to gather a group of academics, and the fact that we had full-time fellows coming from these institutions was extremely reassuring for them. So yeah, I think that's and there was also the context of Brexit. So I guess that having a connection with something that was building up in Europe made sense at a moment where
Connections were being broken.
the channel was getting wider and wider.
We have one more geography-related question from the audience, and I'll expand on it a little bit. So all of these three cities are large, international. Are you looking, when you will be expanding, are you also looking for more, I'm trying to find the correct word, localized.
Bremen.
Yeah, I'm looking for places like Bremen. So in Bremen, around Bremen, we organizationally placed a webinar at the Constructor University Bremen, which is in Vegesack, not even in Bremen. And I don't speak German, but I had to learn because otherwise they wouldn't give me a pie with black tea. So I had to ask for that in German in Vegesack. Are you looking for places like that to add to your roster?
Yes, I mean, I'm very pragmatic, and we start with cities that symbolically resonate with some kind of both a journey and prestige, and so
attractive.
But yeah, exactly. But going forward, and it will be a question of balance. I would be very happy to have a campus in not in the woods, but in the mountain, and offer students who would be willing to do this an experience that it will be much more rural, much more in the countryside, and experience what life can feel like outside of cities. So I would be even more radical. I think it would make total sense to do that.
Question. Mikhail Bukhtayarov is the audience member who has asked. So we have arrived to the final question of our webinar. So Boris, you've been at this for 3 years. I would guess that the honeymoon period of presidency is already over and you have seen both sides of the deal. So imagine there is someone out there in the world, an educator looking to found an innovative university and then potentially lead it. What advice would you give to them?
I mean, it's starting a new university or transforming a university.
Well, I know those are two different experiences. Let's stick with actually starting a new institution.
Well, I think you need to be clear about the resources it requires. Apart from your own personal equation, but you do need to convince academics, and it's a special crowd, and if you don't have any interest for research, for intellectual discussions, and so on, I think it's very difficult to create something meaningful and develop a faculty, which is, I think, crucial to start a university. So you need to have a genuine interest in not only in education, but also in intellectual debates and be intellectually curious. But then it gets down as well to because you need to build trust with the first people you recruit. They won't get to you. They are very strong in critical thinking. So if you don't have a PhD, if you are not able to engage in such discussions, show curiosity for their research and so on, and show that you are able to discuss, then I think it's very difficult. But more practically, you need funds. It takes a long time to gather the funding for new universities. If you don't have a sponsor from the start, and that was not my case, I didn't have a sponsor. So I raised fund, I think I did like 6 rounds of financing, which is the best way to raise funds, because then you increase the value and progressively. But it's really tiring. And you raise funds mostly from individuals, because there are no investment funds for that unless you are already profitable, which you are not when you start. So it's really an extreme sport, and you need to be aware of that. And good ideas don't sell. You need to have a realistic business plan, and have the connections that will allow the first ones to come in, and then this circle to expand with connections, because the new investors will come because there are also already quite a few investors, and you have been able to demonstrate that you're able to make things happen. So for me, it's been a very gradual and stressful journey, especially when you're engaged in long-term operations and you don't have a long-term funding. It's pretty stressful. Hopefully we're not hopefully, but fortunately we are beyond that point. And then you need to be a good manager, because you need to interact with people, with salespeople. You need to interact with academics, as I said. You need to operate with people that will handle more the operations, and so you need to have a variety of. You need to be very adaptable in how you interact with people. If you are intellectual when you interact with your sales team, it won't work. So you need to be very flexible. And having worked in the civil service, having worked at McKinsey, having been a social entrepreneur, and having done some research and being an entrepreneur as well, I was immersed in very different professional cultures that allowed me to navigate these different cultures inside the universities, and with keeping in mind, especially in the beginning, you can't have this divide between administration and faculty. You need to have a team, and this requires attention and energy.
Thank you. I especially appreciated the metaphor of extreme sports. That's
yes. That's an extreme.
Yeah,
we're going to use it or overuse it, but we'll cite you.
Yeah. But it feels like a sprint, and it lasts as long as a marathon, right?
And adrenaline. Yeah. Thank you, Boris.
Thank you very much for your invitation,
Boris. It's been a wonderful intellectual journey. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
Alex. Can you have yes? All right. So everybody, thank you for being with us. Thank you for watching the recording. We hope to see you in 2 weeks. We will be discussing a very bold enterprise, bold and novel, I would say. New University is a college in Washington, which is the only higher education institution in the United States that offers a 3-year bachelor's degree without studying in the summer. So students have proper summer breaks, and yet they can graduate in 3 years. And they have managed to make it affordable. Just how affordable you will learn when you join us. So we'll see you in 2 weeks.